Welcome back to another episode of the Engineer Future podcast. And yeah, it feels nice to say that after a long, long time of really not recording anything. Nikolai, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah, I think we both kind of took a very extended break, just life situations, and I think we'll dive a little bit deeper into this episode when we get to that. But yeah, I'm just excited to really be here again, recording. It's been again a long, long time, and we both had, I think, some changes. I think I probably had a little more life changes than you did, but we were just kind of busy. Um, I think I was looking back, and I think it's been like 7 months since we last published something, which is kind of wild, or even like recorded anything. Um, so yeah, what are you being up to? And just gonna let's just start there. I don't think we need to go too much into detail. I'm sure we will sprinkle some of that stuff in future episodes, but I figure we can just kind of give a little bit of update of where we've been and we have like exciting episode today. More on that in a little bit, just based on kind of some of my life changes in the last few months.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it actually even starts back 2 years ago. I joined a huge company. And so I made a career change, and it's been kind of a wild ride for 2 years. And you don't just make a career change and then everything is easy, right? You have still a lot of learning, you have a lot of growing, just like we all do. But it was just a little bit uh, multiplied by just the newness of the position and the firm. Then last summer we actually moved, and so again, moving is a huge event in itself, but it takes time to settle and little projects here and there. And I haven't added any people to my family. We're set with our three kids, but yeah, project wise, I've been pursuing a few big projects recently that have taken a lot of time, and a few months of just hunkering down and going after it. And, it's been a pretty good ride these last few months.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hinted at that a little bit. I think when we first stopped back in April, just was because we welcomed our fourth daughter, for our child. It was a daughter, um, and that just kind of destroyed my really motivation to do any other thing that just kind of being at home um, and yeah, just spend time with family and everything. So that really derailed a lot of things. And I took a few weeks off when she was born. Did a lot of house projects because my wife was like, "We need to get all this done before we get busy for the summer." We built a swing set. We built a few things kind of inside the house. And then really this summer just kicked in, and we had a few trips in January, like every single weekend, and then we spent a month in Colombia. So that was just again a lot of things going on in the summer. But really, the I think one of the things that I think what we're here talking about this topic today too is because I switched jobs. I was at Footies for 4.5 years. Um, it was nothing to do with my experience there. I mean, I'm immensely grateful with all of that, but I just wanted some change, especially working remote. And I was looking at jobs, and actually, one of my friends from Jacobs reached out to me and say, "Hey, we're looking for people. Are you interested?" At that time, I already had an offer on the table, and I think it was a surprise, and I think kind of a blessing that came at that time. I think um, I really did not think too much about it at that time. I was like, well, I don't really want to be fully remote again. Obviously, Jacobs is a great company. I've heard about it before. I've applied to jobs in the past. So I was like, I'll just give it a try. And it was very clear after talking with them for a couple hours that I think this was a great opportunity. Um, Similar to what I was doing before, again, like bridge design, so not too far off. And yeah, I ended up joining the beginning of August, mid August, and it's been great so far. I mean, we're recording this end of October, so it's been a couple of months, and I don't regret anything. So yeah, you and I are working at the same company after all these years.
I know it's so weird. I mean, we're different states, obviously, but technically we report to the same kind of geography. At least
Right.
how that's how we're split up. And I know for you, Matt, your structures lead, is one of
Mhm.
the people I met early on, and he's just solid. He's awesome. And when I heard that you had an opportunity to work for him, I just thought you're lucky to have him, but he's also very lucky to have you too. So really exciting. Couldn't be happier for you. And yeah, it's weird to work at the same firm, but it's also really exciting too.
Yeah, and I'm sure you had a little bit of hand in kind of easing that decision because I think they were a little hesitant on just like being fully remote and just kind of trying to bring someone in fully remote. So I appreciate that, and just kind of shows how connections and having friends around really just kind of take your path in ways that you didn't expect before. Like Fernando, who's my friend, who reached out to me. We met back in Denver. We're both in the AAC group down there. We kind of stayed in touch. We every now and then chat and talk. And yeah, it just kind of came out of the blue and surprised me. And here we are. I think we both were doing this podcast before we worked at Jacobs, which is kind of
Hmm.
wild. It's been that
Yeah.
long, I guess.
Yeah, no, it has been wild. But, with any change, it changing jobs, changing companies is a big deal. There's culture shifts, there's new people, there's new resources, there's just a lot of differences. And then I think you and I both came from small firms,
Yep.
and just to remind people who've heard my story before, but maybe some haven't, I spent the first 14 years of my career at small companies only. The biggest firm I ever worked for before working here at Jacobs was 30 people, and then the last 7 years prior to Jacobs, I joined my dad, who owned a small firm locally here. Well, it was just him at the time, and I joined him, so I was his employee number two, and we grew that to about 14 before I left. But yeah, I mean, it's been a big transition to work for an established large firm. But I know that that's our topic for today, and kind of talking about some of the differences and some of the advantages, or maybe even just how things feel different. And yeah, I'm excited to kind of dig into some of these items.
Yeah, and I figure I'll start just because I'm kind of fresh and pretty recently started. And just kind of giving my like very raw first impressions of kind of what I maybe like expected to be before coming, and maybe some of the surprises, some nice, some maybe like not that nice in a sense of like, oh, I figure we had some of these. Um, but I think the biggest surprise to me was how like kind and helpful everyone was. I think at the first day, I mean, I'm fully remote. I'm like literally just ship my computer off on Friday and then receive my computer on Sunday and started work on Monday. But I got chats from people saying, "Hey, welcome," especially some people that I talked to when I was kind of doing the interview process, as well as just starting to join different teams, and everyone was kind of very helpful. So I was very surprised about that, and I think just again from the interview, I was kind of asking some of those questions, like what is the team dynamic is like. So those are some things that you should definitely ask before you join a company, obviously. So I knew a little bit of that, so that was just nice. It just I felt like I was at home. Basically, I was just joining a team that didn't feel like I was coming from the outside. I was like they just kind of welcomed me, and that was really great. Maybe some of the things that I
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
yeah, and maybe you've experienced the same. But I think one of the things that I was kind of surprised were at my other firm, which I mean, it's just a lot smaller, like under 20 employees total. We had a lot of like systems and like templates for calcs and like spreadsheets and all that stuff. And it doesn't seem there is a lot of that right now. It's more like you create your own and you have your own kind of library of templates, which I think it's great. But for me starting, I was like, I have nothing. I was like, I wish at least I had a little bit. So that's been a little bit of an adjustment. And I mean, I've started to bulk my bank of spreadsheets and calculations and all of that. So I don't think it's just like a downside, but just starting off, I was like, whoa, now I need to like create some of this stuff for my own, which is great because then I know how to use it. I can adjust it to how I like doing things. But that was probably one of the, I'll say, like biggest surprises when I first joined.
Sure. Yeah, I know for me, I didn't. I didn't know where to find things, at first because you don't know the folder structure and all of that. And sometimes, one person maybe had kind of ownership of certain things and, just building the network, figuring out who has what. That took me a while as well, and so we've been kind of building our library. And then as a team, we've been kind of consolidating into specific team resources, so obviously your structure is on roadway. And so for our roadway, we've been trying to collect kind of some roadway calc folders and just make sure that everything we find that we know exists, we just need to find the people who have them, and we're putting them into kind of one spot. So that's also been part of our team initiative is getting a lot of these things into place.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and I think that's something we hope we do too. And I know, I mean, talking with Fernando, he said that there was kind of some initial thoughts of doing some of that, but obviously, like people are busy, they're slammed, they want to just kind of get through work, and sometimes that's really not a big option right away. So I hope we can get there. And I mean, as I start getting to know people and kind of knowing the process, I think there's a lot of great opportunities to kind of evolve in the career, um, and just kind of get to know kind of all the ins and outs of like who does what. And I think that's probably what's going to take the longest. But at the same time, I think it's great just because we have, I mean, it's such a large company. You have people basically all over the US, all over the world, and you can tap into that network by just logging on Google Teams, searching, or in the Jacobs Hub to find information. And it's just amazing that just instantly, as you join this huge company, you have this huge network that you can tap into. Um,
Yeah.
I guess what are some of the ways that you maybe have taken advantage of that? I just haven't had even like the mental capacity of like process all of that. There is just a lot going on.
You know what? It is like insane to me sometimes how there's an expert for literally everything. Before I started, one of the people who was helping to hire me shared a story about he needed to answer something about a tunnel, and he knew nothing about tunnels. He's a roadway engineer, and he made, I think, 3 phone calls and was able to connect to a tunnel expert within our firm, and that person was able to answer our question. Then, just recently, we're working on a project that a roadway is going to be going through, some farm fields. And the way these farm fields are, environmental stuff, like I'm not really part of it. I'm just kind of hearing about it. But uh, there's some cattle waste ponds that need to be looked at and mitigated, and again, have no idea how to do that. And I think he said 2 calls, he was able to find an expert in our company who did that. Just like who knew? But as far as just roadway itself, we have team members all over the country. We have resources out of the country, and so like I've even had some people from other countries teach me how to use a software, or they teach some of my coworkers how to use a certain software. And just the amount of knowledge, like I don't have to know every single detail, because there's somebody out there who can definitely help. And that's just been huge. Whereas at the small firm I was at, it was, typically me and maybe 2 interns at a time working on something. And if we couldn't figure it out, one of us had to figure it out. And if
You are
we
the
couldn't,
expert,
oh man, yeah, the expert, or then, manpower even,
right?
you have 200 hours worth of stuff you have to get done in 2 weeks, it all kind of fell on you. You had to find a way to get it done. Whereas now in a pinch, I have people I can reach out to, and it's nice. Now, again, we're thankfully all busy, but yes, we we have resources, we have people, and people who are willing to jump in and like, yeah, I would love to help. And so that's just kind of a nice benefit, that moving here.
Yeah, and I think that's something that as I kind of start learning more about and kind of creating does like maybe like more personal connection, like knowing people by name, like within the team, or like outside the team. I mean, in Denver, I think there are like 2 offices and they work semi closely sometimes. And um, it just, yeah, it's just there's a lot that can happen, and the amount of information like I received the first couple of weeks was like this is just too overwhelming. I'm just gonna write it down, put it to the side, and whenever I need something, I know where to look and I know who to ask. Because there's a lot of information. I mean, onboarding and all of that stuff takes a lot of time. And for me, like I think similar to you, I hadn't really worked at a large company. I did an internship at a company of about like 2,000 people here in South Dakota, but it wasn't like this. I wasn't like full time. I wasn't really dealing with benefits and all of that stuff. Um, and yeah, my two last companies were pretty small, both of them under 20 employees. So navigating that has been quite interesting. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't know how much we really want to keep ranting on kind of our experience here, but I think something that I can have my outline here, just talking about like the organizational structure of the company. I think there's a lot more like that as as someone coming from, I'll say my older firm, Foothills, was on like the verge of being like a small company turning into like a mid-sized company. There was a lot of procedures, like actual organizational structure coming together. So it didn't feel that different in that sense. I'm sure at your smaller firms, you don't have that kind of things. You're kind of just an engineer, and some days you may be the social manager, social media manager. Some other days you may be the BD person. Like there's different things you do within that. But coming to this, you kind of have your spot. You a lot of times, if you need to worry about those things, you have someone to reach out to. Even if you have like a special project, in terms of like, hey, we need you to help us pursue this project. Talk to these people that know all the ins and outs. So that's nice. I mean, I haven't got to any of these kind of what I call side projects within Jacobs, but I imagine there's a lot of that happening, especially if you are trying to pursue a project with someone else. There's a team that helps you kind of navigate that.
Yeah, yeah, we have tons of support. And I think one other thought I wanted to share was, in the smaller firm, uh, if I had a need for something, I go and talk to like the owner of the firm, and they just say yes or no, Or at my last firm, where I was helping lead the office, a lot of the decisions ended at me. It was only when it got to kind of a certain dollar value that I would have to go to my dad, who was the primary owner of the company, and so we would do that. But most everything under a pretty large number, I had full authority to make those decisions. And here, there are certain processes in place. And at first, I kind of was a little it was different, it was a challenge for me to have a little bit of red tape, if you wanna call it that, to go through. But I think just with a little patience, I was able to kind of just say, "Okay, I can fill out this form. Not too big of a deal," you know? And, there are reasons they have these processes in place, and, the supervisors I've had, the managers, the leadership that I've had, they all are just say, "Whatever is the right thing, we're gonna do the right thing," And at the end of the day, they care about the people. Like you said, you were welcomed in. I haven't seen any other experience other than that. Everybody seems very people oriented, which is definitely what uh, that's kind of my passion and my vision and mission is just people oriented, and the projects will get done if we take care of the people, and I feel that here. And so as a group leader, a lot of the things that I do, I'm trying to create a culture within just my group, and we have a little bit of a unique culture, but it's all in alignment with the overall culture of Jacobs and the vision and mission of Jacobs. And so as long as we stay in that alignment, anything we do to enhance our group is just positive in my opinion. And it's just been fun to have that uh, opportunity to grow and lead the team. And man, I really love my team. I get pumped up every time we talk.
Yeah, I'm trying to like feel like we're talking too much about Jacobs, which is great. I mean, I love joining Jacobs, but I don't want this to turn into like a promotion for Jacobs, which
Right.
uh, but yeah, I just kind of want to touch maybe on like the higher level things. Like let's talk about maybe some of the advice that you will give someone that is maybe working at a smaller firm moving into a larger firm, and I think we can even touch a little bit on the opposite side. Basically, someone working in a large firm trying to move into a smaller firm. Kind
Hmm.
of briefly touch through that. And I'm out my thoughts and whatnot.
Man, okay. I mean, where to start? That's a tough one. Uh, yeah, I mentioned people because at my last firm, the people were the priority, and it's become kind of a negative to say, oh, it feels like a family. I never really felt that it was a negative to say that, but I know there's been a lot more uh, influencers saying that that should be a red flag. I kind of disagree personally a little bit, but we really did feel like family. But my group here, we feel very well connected. We feel very strong relationship, and so I think yeah, I think either firm you go to, you're going to feel that. The red tape, like I said, when you go to a smaller firm, sometimes decisions are just easier. Go, no goes, decisions are a little easier. It's just one question. It doesn't have to turn into a meeting to see, does this align with our, client success path and all these other things. It's just, do we want it or not? And so that's a difference if you were to go to a smaller firm. Um, Benefits wise, that's another thing that larger firms can offer. I know the smaller firms that I worked at all had very competitive health and 401k type of stuff. And some of the larger firms are able to offer a little extra, things. Now, not saying all small firms can't offer these
Mhm.
things, but sometimes when you're larger, you get exposure to additional fringe benefits and mindfulness things and whatever it might be. There might be a little bit more available to you in that, but then there's also certain costs associated with those things too, so you just got to watch out which benefit package you choose and all of that stuff. But what other things on top of mind for you?
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with all of that. I think, yeah, just kind of that transition from a smaller firm to a large firm. I think there's a lot of just being a little more open-minded to kind of the processes and procedures that a large firm may have, and I think that's no surprise to anyone, I hope. And it shouldn't be a surprise if you're moving from a small company to a large company, especially the very very small consulting firms. There's not a lot I'll say there is some, especially in engineering, where you do have some of those like procedures and like templates we were talking about early on. But when you get to the large scales, you need that paper trail, and I think that's kind of where a lot of surprises came, in terms of like every time I need something, I need to submit a ticket. Every time I need to ask a question, sometimes there is a ticket. It's not like, oh, I'm just gonna walk here next to the HR manager next door and just ask her a question. Um, so I think for me it was more, and honestly, just being remote. That's something I wish I had at the old company, just that paper trail and just kind of taking notes and like making sure everything that is like talked about gets put into paper and like saved in a file, because then when I'm looking for something and maybe I wasn't part of that discussion, I could go and see it and not have to waste time either redoing work or doing some of this stuff. So that's something I personally appreciate and like, just a little bit more of that. I wouldn't say like back and forth in terms of communication, but just having a place where kind of you can follow like where this design went, basically, if that makes sense. Just kind of having
Yeah,
a more like organized structure. I think that works better for me.
sure.
I think on the other side, if you're coming from large company, I think usually larger companies have that kind of procedure, in that sense. So coming to a small company, that may be a little bit more of a surprise. And I think what you can do is start doing it yourself, like for your own sake. Like, hey, I want to keep this stuff organized, and like, and try to expand it to the rest of the people, slowly. I've tried that a little bit in the past, and it's like people don't like change, don't like to do a little extra work sometimes. Um, but that way, like, at least you're organized, at least you know where your stuff is, and I think that's something I've tried, and I think we talked about in the past a lot of times, is to just have. I mean, as engineers, I think that having that record is super, super important.
Yeah. Another difference that I have found, and this one doesn't really apply to me as far as like things that I want, but it's just been kind of like a, oh, that's kind of cool situation. Is the types of projects that you have the ability to work on. When I was at the small firm, I got to work on everything I wanted. It was good, it was local, but if I wanted to work on a big design build, we would just try to team up with somebody on that. Or if we wanted to work on a smaller park project, we would try to go after that. So I got to work on the projects that I wanted, but it was a wide variety because there's not like one single type of project every single time. What I mean by that is I use this example of somebody on my team loves roundabouts and they want to be a roundabout expert. They want to do only roundabout projects, And if I was at a small firm in Arizona, I'm not going to have only roundabout projects to work on. I don't have that ability. Whereas here, I could reach out to somebody in Georgia or Washington or Arizona or Colorado and just, all right, where's the next roundabout project, and be able to find that type of project for my employee. And so that's been a very cool change. But again, it doesn't necessarily apply to me. It's just been some of an observation because I get to work on everything I want to work on, anyways. I have a very I like working on a variety of things, but if you are looking to become an expert in one specific thing, there's definitely a benefit of that.
Yeah, that's definitely a really good point. Yeah, I think that's probably good for now. I'm sure we'll dive into a lot of more of this. We want to try to keep this episode a little shorter for our sake and probably your sake too, as BC engineers as well. But do you have any last thoughts, comments, anything else you want to share today?
Yeah, I think we could have definitely gone longer. We could have pinpointed a lot of more differences, but I think I would like to just leave the listener by saying we're just two people's opinions, and I have had a really positive experience moving from a small firm to a large firm, and I know people who have not enjoyed their time at large firms as much as I have right now. So, continue to ask people questions if you're considering a job change. Ask mentors and other people at the firms that you're at or the firm you're leaving, lots of different questions and just get a well rounded thought, because as much as I love to share our story, we just have two opinions and definitely look out for more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a great point to leave it at. It's just, and I think we say this often enough. Like, these are just our opinions. Sometimes we dive different into topics that maybe we're a little more invested in, or maybe just we're a little bit more of an expert. But usually we're just gonna hear just what interests us, and I think this is something that is just happening in our lives, and it's kind of interesting to see some of those differences. And I want to do a lot more of these episodes where just kind of a lot more casual on like our own experiences, as well as just maybe some of the more in depth, maybe like well researched episodes. So yeah, I'm excited. I think this is a new feeling. I think I haven't felt this excited about podcasting in a while, which is great. It's been a long time. I've taken a few breaks over the years, but I think we're almost on starting year 5, which is wild to say about this podcast.
Good for
Starting
you. Nice
2020.
job.
I think you joined. I want to say last year, 2 years ago. Probably
About a
two
year and a
years,
half.
yeah. And that's been great. Has lifted a lot of the load off me, and I mean, I enjoy just having the conversations and all of that. I'm gonna leave a form on the show notes and the website for anyone that has any questions, any like podcast episode ideas, anything. I think we want to start collecting some of that stuff and make sure we have everything. We are sharing the information you want to hear, basically. So, yeah, I'm very excited. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll talk to you later. And as always, let's continue engineering our future.